Hey, what's up everybody? Let's jump into a start to finish landscape edit, and I'll show you some quick creative ways that you can bring your landscape photography to life using ON1 Photo RAW 2024. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's get creative with our landscape photography. All right, so inside of Photo RAW here, let's take a look at this start to finish landscape edit, and we'll start right from the very beginning and we'll just move right along into the end of the edit. So first things first, with this photograph, I think we really just need to crop it right out of the gate and straighten things up. So I'll hit C on my keyboard. That's a quick way to access the crop tool. You can also access that over here by selecting crop. Now to level the photograph, I'm going to use this leveling tool. I can select that. I can just drop a line now, or drop a point, and create a line rather. And it will straighten that horizon line for me and ensure things are nice and level. So let's just choose this check mark. You can also hit enter on your keyboard to enable the cropping. And we're not actually going to use Brilliance AI. It's a really fast way to sort of develop the settings, but I think with this image we could do it manually and still not spend that much time with it. So I'm going to go to my tone and color, and I'm going to use a camera profile to bring out some of the basic sort of tones and colors within the image. And an easy one for landscapes is this ON1 landscape option. You can see there with just that ON1 landscape, it really does a great job of just boosting up some of those midtones and giving us a little bit more light into the scene, as well as adding in just a hair of contrast. So I think that's all I'm really going to do as far as my camera profile here. Let's just add in maybe a bit more contrast into the scene there so things aren't flat. And I'm also going to just boost up my midtones just a little bit to see some of those middle grays within the photo. So things are looking great here. If I hit the backslash key on my keyboard, nothing too crazy, just bringing out some of those basic tones and colors within the photo. So now let's focus on sort of the next step in the landscape workflow, modifying specific areas with our local adjustments. So we'll go into the local adjustment tab here. I'm going to add an adjustment, and I'll just rename this adjustment Sky Darken. And we'll use this Sky Darken local adjustment to darken up and give our sky a little bit more contrast and a little bit more detail. So I'm going to hit M on my keyboard to grab my masking bug, or my gradient mask. And I'm just going to drop this down here, going to flip it around there. And that's going to allow me to target just that sky region there. And I'll actually feather that out a little bit to ensure that it blends in naturally with the environment. And one thing real quick, I'm just going to go up to view, and I'm going to disable that hide tool option bar there. So if I go to view, I'm going to disable that auto hide tool option bar. That way this option bar just stays there the entire time I'm modifying this landscape with different tools. So the mask looks good. Let's just turn this off and on here. It's doing a pretty great job of bringing in some more detail into the sky there. Let's add in some contrast into that. And we'll also pull up on the whites just a little bit to make sure things don't look flat. So now that we've darkened up that sky there, everything's looking a little bit more detailed in that area and has a bit more contrast. But I'd like to modify some specific areas in the bottom of the foreground as well, such as this dock area with the wood and also the water itself. So what I'm going to do to add in detail into this dock section is I'm actually going to go into my effects tab here. I'm going to add a filter, and we'll just add dynamic contrast, and we'll make this surreal to ensure that it's really sort of popping with detail. Now with our detail, we only wanted to apply it into a specific region, so we'll invert that mask. We'll use our masking brush set to paint. You can modify the paint mode to either paint or erase with Shift and X on your keyboard. And with the paint mode enabled, we'll just paint in that detail into the dock there. And remember, you can use the bracket keys on your keyboard to modify the brush size. Left bracket will decrease size, and right bracket will increase the size. So we brushed that in there, and let's just take a look at that before and after. And it's really doing a great job of incorporating detail and texture into that dock region. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mask in another filter into the water here, and we're going to use the glow filter to do that. We'll add a filter, same thing, we'll use glow. And this time we're going to use a preset style darker. I really love this preset on water here. You can see if I turn it off and on, really beautiful job with the fog and some of these areas within that reflection. Let me just close out of my masking properties there. I'm going to hit B on the keyboard to grab my masking brush there. And I'll use the paint mode to just paint. Oops, I missed a step, guys, my bad. We need to go into the masking properties there, and we need to invert that mask, just like we did with the dynamic contrast. That way we can paint it into specific areas. So now that we've inverted that mask, now we can use our masking brush here, and we can paint this in to this water there. And I'm going to overlap just a little bit of it onto sort of that land section because I really love what it does to the fog and the sort of haziness of the photo. But if I turn it off and on here, it's really doing wonders to that water section there and just really bringing a whole lot of life into that specific region. Now there's one other area that I think we should bring in detail into, and that is this area with trees there. So let's just hit K on the keyboard. That'll grab me my Super Select AI tool. I can use that to hover over different regions within my photo, and I can see that this has found this sort of tree region really easily. So I'm just going to select that there. You can see it's indicated to me that it's selected with that blue overlay. I'll just right click and we'll bring in a little bit more of that surreal detail, but we'll place it into those other regions there. So if I turn that off and on there, really nice job of just bringing some detail and texture back into that area. Let's pull back on the opacity to ensure it's not too much, but a nice subtle bit of punch within the texture there looks really nice. So everything is looking pretty great so far. I don't think I'd modify too much else. And so let's hit the backslash key on our keyboard here. There's our original, and this is after, and I'm really digging it so far. One thing I may do is I may go back into the develop tab, and I'll go into my tone and color, and I may just warm things up just a little bit with that temperature slider there. That way I can bring a little bit of warmth into this sort of sunny glow that's happening into the scene. And I think it's looking really nice with that bit of a temperature boost there. Another thing you can do to sort of modify the temperature within your photograph and change it a bit to warm or cool is you can add a filter and you can add the photo filter. Within the photo filter, there's a ton of awesome options here for modifying the color within your scene. The photo filter acts as if it's a lens attachment or a lens filter placed on the end of your lens to get a color modification, or it can add in contrast with polarizing. Just a lot of awesome options within the photo filter. Another great option within the photo filter is if you go to the More menu and you choose Skylight, you can use this to brighten things up a bit within your scene, as well as to add in contrast. Because the color here is set to white, we can pull up on the amount slider and we can bring in more brightness into the photo to make things a little bit more lively. And we can also use this polarizing option to bring in contrast. And if we need to, we can increase the saturation to give it a bit more color. So I really like to use that photo filter at the end just to ensure the image is exactly how I want it. And you can use that skylight option, or really any of these other options, to just get a bit creative and make sure that scene is looking the way you need it. Another thing I may do real quick, and I should have done this at the beginning, but not a huge deal, is I'm actually going to get rid of this car there. And an easy way to do that is by using the healing brush. So I'm going to hit Q on the keyboard there. That's going to pull up my healing brush there. It's that option and that icon. And I'm going to make sure my mode is set to heal, and I'm just going to paint over my car. That's going to grab a neighboring region and fill that area and heal it up. I'll just hit Z on the keyboard, and we've taken care of that distraction there. And I see there's maybe one car also right there, so we'll clean that up as well, sort of modify that to fit. And there we go. We've gotten rid of those two distracting elements in there, and we've really brought the scene to life by getting creative with specific masking regions and also a few different filters. So let's hit the backslash key on our keyboard. We have our original and our after. And things are looking a little bit too bright there in that water region. So there's a couple of things we can do. We can pull back on that photo filter that we used to brighten it up. Or if we want to sort of keep the brightness and just tame down this middle section, let's go in and add a local adjustment here. I'll add this in and say middle darken. And we're going to hit M on the keyboard to grab that masking gradient option, our masking gradient tool. And rather than using that preset linear top and our shape gradient, we're going to go into the shape and choose edges. That way, if we drop this down, it protects the edges, but we can resize this mask here to sort of fit that middle region where we want a little bit more detail within that reflection. And I'll move my masking properties there so they're not in the way. And maybe make this a little bit smaller so it's a little bit more subtle. But we'll feather that out quite a bit there. And watch as I turn this off and on here. You can fine tune that region there to fit whatever sort of look that you're going for. Maybe pull back on the opacity a little bit, but by using that local adjustment there, we've brought back a lot of that detail that we sort of blew out earlier on in the edit. So that was my start to finish landscape edit. I hope you learned a bit about creating a landscape edit from the very beginning all the way to styling. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you inside the next lesson.